Know verily that the soul is a sign of God, a heavenly gem whose reality the most learned of men hath failed to grasp, and whose mystery no mind, however acute, can ever hope to unravel. It is the first among all created things to declare the excellence of its Creator, the first to recognize his glory, to cleave to his truth, and to bow down in adoration before him. If it be faithful to God, it will reflect his light, and will eventually return unto him. If it fail, however, in its allegiance to its Creator, it will become a victim to self and passion, and will in the end sink in their depths. Baha'u'llah. Know thou of a truth that if the soul of man hath walked in the ways of God, it will assuredly return and be gathered to the glory of the Beloved. Baha'u'llah.
So this week, we're really happy to have Dr. Jena Khodadad, and she'll be speaking on the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul. Dr. Jena Khadem Khodadad is a fourth-generation Iranian Baha'i. The major part of her life was in the United States, where she received her Ph.D. degree from Northwestern University in biological sciences, with a focus on cellular and molecular biology, followed by postdoctoral fellowships and faculty positions in medical and graduate schools. Her academic career entailed lecturing to medical and graduate students and research in cellular and molecular biology. Jena is an emeritus professor. Her scientific publications are in scientific journals and academic books. Aside from her scientific research and publications, she's deeply interested in studies centered on Baha'i history, worldview, and the fundamental principles of the Baha'i Faith, such as the harmony of science and religion. And her latest publication is a book entitled Scientific Principles at Work in the Worldwide Advancement of the Baha'i Faith. So with that, I'll hand it off to Dr. Khodadad.
This talk is inspired by the principles and teachings of Baha'i Faith. I wish to provide a brief overview for those who may not be familiar with the Baha'i Faith, the most recent of the world's universal religions. The principles and teachings of Baha'i Faith inspire and guide this global age. The Baha'i Faith is widely spread across our entire planet, from pole to pole and in all corners of the world, including within its fold diverse races, religions, nationalities, and ethnicities. It is a veritable microcosm of humanity. It is dedicated to the principle of the oneness of humankind. Thus, it is ideally suited for bringing about the unification and solidarity of races, ethnicities, religions, and nations across this planet. This talk is centered on a fascinating and intriguing theme, the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul. The puzzle of consciousness is centered on an inexplicable puzzle. I have presented on this theme in various forums, as well as in recent publication in light of Irfan. This talk will be accompanied throughout with PowerPoint slides. PowerPoint slides facilitate order, clarity, and focus. Importantly, each respective PowerPoint slide bears authentication of the sources of references and citation used throughout this talk. In the Persian language, consciousness is agahi. Consciousness implies awareness. Agahi is a fascinating and intriguing theme. It is profound and enigmatic. Consciousness agahi has numerous dimensions and implications. Hence, it can be explored at several levels, from consciousness of the universe to the consciousness of the lower forms of life, and specifically to the consciousness of that unique, singular creation, the human. Discourse conversations on consciousness take place in various disciplines, ranging from natural sciences, from neuroscience to social sciences, philosophy, psychology, and religion. Consciousness has a number of significant implications, among them awareness of one's purpose in life, awareness of one's identity. Consciousness inspires one to transcend beyond the physical to higher levels of awareness. Consciousness has engaged numerous scientists and scholars from several specialized fields. Nevertheless, the enigma, the puzzle of consciousness, continues to persist. Reflection on consciousness leads to reflection on the human soul. Confronted with puzzles and mysteries, we reach an impasse beyond which all understanding fails. Consciousness will ever remain a puzzle. The human soul will ever remain a mystery. I do not intend to offer a comprehensive coverage of the theme consciousness, nor do I plan to provide answers to a multitude of questions that relate to consciousness in numerous fields of study, including the disciplines of psychology, philosophy, and few others. Nor do I intend to discuss those conventional, abstruse philosophical questions that have been debated over time. Questions such as, does the mind have a reality? Does it actually exist? Importantly, this talk is in line with the current plan of the Baha'i world, guided by the supreme governing body of the Baha'i Faith, the Universal House of Justice. Engaging in public discourse is emphasized and encouraged. I now wish to venture into this fascinating yet intriguing theme on two mysteries, two puzzles, the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul. I plan to place the focus of this talk first on learnings from neuroscience on consciousness, and next to probe the fundamental beliefs of the Baha'i Faith, that is, insights from Baha'i Faith on the human soul. Thus, I bring forth two puzzles, two mystery, the incomprehensible consciousness and the unfathomable human soul. In 2005, the prestigious journal Science published a special anniversary issue that featured 125 questions scientists have failed to answer. What is the biological basis of consciousness? Was the second of the two top questions. Now, some years after, almost 18, we have reached very few understandings, but are left with yet more questions and puzzles. Regarding the flow of this talk on the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul, first I wish to present some current knowledge on the scientific fundamentals of the neuroscience of consciousness. Next, I plan to offer certain fundamental beliefs of the Baha'i Faith on the human soul. The puzzle of consciousness. Consciousness is a puzzle beyond comprehensions. On another front, I wish to bring forth for reflection the mystery of the soul. The human soul also continues to escape comprehension. The nature of the soul remains a mystery. The fundamental beliefs of Baha'i Faith shed insights on the existence, the reality of the human soul and its immortality. Once again, consciousness, awareness, agahi is the state of being aware of and responsive to one's surroundings. This level of consciousness, agahi, is lost at death and often during coma. The puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul will continue to mystify us. Two mysteries, two puzzles. The puzzle of consciousness is the outcome of reflection on few fundamental learnings from neuroscience. The other, the mystery of the soul, is the outcome of in-depth reflection on insights gleaned from Baha'i sacred writings on the soul. Insights on consciousness extend to insights on the soul, the rational soul, human spirit. That is the nature and immortality of the soul. Such reflections lead to the singularity of the human among all created forms. Abdu'l-Baha, one of the central figures in the Baha'i Faith, through his numerous public talks and writings, among them some answered questions, has expounded on human uniqueness, on human singularity. This presentation will advance from learnings in neuroscience to Baha'i beliefs on the human soul. These two enigmas, the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul, will ever continue to intrigue, but also to inspire us. It has been proposed that the enigmas of puzzle of consciousness and also the mystery of the soul may relate to dimensions, other worlds that are totally incomprehensible. Before delving deeper into this important theme, I wish to offer a few words to explain my keen interest and fascination with consciousness. My interest in consciousness is the outcome of lecturing over the years on neuroscience and neuroanatomy to medical and graduate students. Dissecting, probing, demonstrating, and identifying various parts of the human brain, each assigned to a specific function, some to hearing, some to language, some to sensation, some to muscle movement, some to memory, and so on, instill a sense of awe and also reverence, invariably leading to reflection on human uniqueness, on human singularity. That at one time such precious brain specimen had been instrumental of thought and consciousness of their noble owners instill reverence. Lecturing on the fascinating and awesome functions of the human brain and dissections in the laboratory intensified my sense of profound awe and fascination, leading to in-depth reflection on the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul, bringing forth an intriguing perennial question. What mysteries underlie these intricate structures? Those intricate structures, exquisitely specialized for specific functions, continue to evoke a sense of awe and wonderment, invariably leading to heightened awareness of human uniqueness. It is written in the Bible, the Old Testament, in Psalms 8:4-6. What is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou visitest him? And Shakespeare's Hamlet poetically expresses, what piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a God, how noble is the creation man. What piece of work is man? Inspires reflection on human uniqueness, on human singularity, leading to reflection on the human brain and human consciousness. An image of the magnificent human brain covered with numerous folds. The human brain is active throughout life. Waves constantly sweep across the brain, prompting one to ask, is consciousness simply a drifting wave of electrical currents over widespread areas of the brain? Or is there something more to consciousness? Reflections on the human brain lead invariably to reflection on consciousness, Agahi, and sense to insights gleaned from the mind and the soul. In Baha'i writings, the human soul is referred to as the rational soul. Thus, we ask once again, what is consciousness, Agahi, in the human? That higher level of consciousness that makes human beings unique, singular? We ask, is consciousness the state of being aware of one's surrounding? Is this sufficient? Lower animals are aware, conscious of their surroundings. We ask, is consciousness characterized by sensation? Lower animals are sentient, are responsive. Does consciousness imply feelings and emotions? Some lower animals are capable of these. Does consciousness imply thought and volition? Are some animals capable of this? Does consciousness imply biographical memory and capability of planning for the future? At some level, some animals are capable of planning for the future. Think of the ant storing its food or the beaver building its dam. The key question yet remains, what is consciousness in the human? That is, what distinguishes human from lower animals? Is it the power of rational and analytical thinking and reasoning? Numerous statements from Abdu'l-Baha, the central figure, one of the central figures of the Baha'i faith, convey that the unique features of human consciousness is being conscious of one's spiritual reality. He speaks of the love of transcendence, that is transcending beyond the physical dimension to the spiritual. This love of transcendence is one of the hallmarks of man. Some answered questions. Is it that higher level of consciousness, Agahi, that makes humans unique, singular? Consciousness, Agahi, in the human is centered on a unique entity, the human soul. Consciousness, Agahi, in the human has the dimension of transcendence. That is the capability to transcend, rise beyond the physical to the higher spiritual dimension. Once again, let us revisit the enigmatic human brain. In this view, striking are the folds covering the entire surface of the brain, folds protrusions called gyri, and the grooves indentation called sulci. Such extensive folds significantly increase the surface area of the brain. A question may be raised, does such increase in surface area account for the higher level of consciousness in the human? That is consciousness in the human dependent on the surface area of the brain, hence the number of nerve cells, neurons? Or is there something more to human consciousness? The brain of a non-human mammal, a whale, has more folds and surface area than the human. We must conclude that consciousness in the human goes far beyond folds and neurons. We must conclude that there is more to human consciousness. Now we ask, what is the structural, anatomical basis of consciousness in the human? We do know that a particular region of the brainstem, is involved in the control of consciousness. We also know that consciousness is associated with the brain. However, consciousness does not reside in a single entity in any part of the brain. There must be something more to human consciousness. Consciousness remains a puzzle. We know that the integrity of the brain is fundamental to consciousness. Different states of consciousness can be detected by brain activity shown by the pattern of the electroencephalograms, EEGs, of the brain. Electroencephalograms vary with the state of consciousness. At this point, fundamental questions emerge. Are the electroencephalograms EEGs, waves after the death of the brain? Are there such waves after the death of the brain? This question invariably leads to a key question on the afterlife. Does consciousness survive the death of the brain? Having briefly shared some thoughts on the puzzle of consciousness, I now wish to make a major transition from neuroscience of consciousness, that is from the human brain, that is from the puzzle of consciousness, to the mystery of the soul. The puzzle of consciousness leads to the mystery of the soul. Once again, we are compelled to reflect on a fundamental, a perennial question. Does consciousness survive the death of the brain? Is there consciousness after death? Many say there is no consciousness, agahi, after the death of the brain. However, a very, very few in the field have implied continuation of consciousness after the death of the brain. Though resistant to recognize that consciousness may continue after death, nevertheless, they suggest continuation of an entity beyond the death of the brain. Clearly, these may have been alluding to an entity we call the human soul. That is continuation of the soul after the death of the brain. At this point, I wish to put forth before this audience a significant expression for one of several eminent neuroscientists who have gone just beyond hinting. Consciousness after death, continuity of human spirit. By Sir John Eccles, an Australian neurophysiologist and philosopher, recipient of Nobel Prize in 1963 in physiology and medicine for his work on the synapse, that connection between two neurons. He was a staunch believer in the reality of the human soul. Eccles refers to the continuation of consciousness beyond the death of the body. All our experiences of matter have the status of second-order reality. Hence, there is an impossible and tragic distortion of our efforts to give an account of the world as experienced, because we have left out the primary reality. If there is no reason to deny the possibility that after the disintegration of the brain that comes with the death of the body, conscious selves may have other existences under quite unimaginable conditions. Thus we ask once again, does consciousness survive the death of the brain? What about the afterlife? Such questions and expressions lead directly to the classical research of two pioneers in this field, Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross studies stages of grief and dealing with fatal disease, the stages of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I wish to include a poetic expression from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed if there is light from within. Studies on near-death experiences share some common features. That is, leads us to, is there life after death based on near-death experiences? Anyway, many of these have been reported, that there is light at the end of a tunnel, a pleasant experience, seeing dead relatives, life review, not wanting to come back, and foremost, that the experience has resulted in a major change in life. Such experiences have been taken seriously by some, but ridiculed by others. Nevertheless, they are not contrary to Baha'i beliefs. Accounts of pleasant experience, not wanting to come back, a major change in life, and their life transforming experience are all in line with Baha'i beliefs, according to my understanding, of course. Now, few fundamental beliefs of the Baha'i faith on the soul and its immortality. Among the abundant rich resources of Baha'i faith on this theme is the tablet of Abdul Baha to Professor Auguste Henri Forel. Professor Auguste Henri Forel with Mrs. Forel, Emma Steinhardt. Professor Henri Forel was a renowned entomologist and also a celebrated brain scientist. His picture is on a 1,000 franc Swiss banknote. This banknote pays tribute to Forel. The image refers to Forel's work on brain anatomy and entomology. Auguste Forel's research on human brain led to the discovery of deep neural pathways, connections with the brain, known as the fields of Forel, referred to in many neuroanatomy textbooks. Auguste Forel was an agnostic. When he wrote to Abdul Baha on December 28, 1928, he acknowledged his agnosticism and asked forthright, yes or no, may I belong to the Baha'i faith with the agnosticism I have mentioned. Abdul Baha wrote back to Forel a long and interesting answer, which was received several months after the passing of Abdul Baha. The guardian of Baha'i faith, Shoghi Effendi, sent a translation of the letter of Abdul Baha to Forel. Subsequently, on August 21, 1921, Forel expressed his appreciation and his acceptance of Baha'i faith. In fact, in his will, he declares forthright that he is a Baha'i. Abdul Baha, in his letter, known as the Tablet of Forel, provides insights on the mind, the soul, and the senses. From among those insights, I wish to share with you the following. Abdul Baha, with scientific and spiritual logic, proves the existence of God and the reality of the human soul, mind, and spirit. On the soul, the tablet of Abdul Baha to Professor Auguste Forel on the soul. On such questions, Abdul Baha expounds. The soul had limitless manifestation of its own. The soul is ever endowed with full strength. The soul is a power that is free from all agencies, whether it be in sleep or waking, is in motion and ever active. Despite the loss of reason, the power of the soul would still continue to exist. The soul changeth not, it depended not upon the body. In other talks and writings, such as in some answered questions, Abdul Baha answers a number of questions which were posed to him on life after death and the human spirit, the human soul. Among them is the following selection. The question, after the body has been cast off and the spirit has taken flight, through what will the rational soul subsist? Answer, some hold that the body is the substance and that it subsists by itself, and that the spirit is an accident which subsists through the substance of the body. The truth, however, is that the rational soul, human spirit, is the substance through which the body subsists. If the accident, the body, is destroyed, the substance, the spirit, remains. On this theme, at this point, I wish to share a poetic expression of a Persian poet and mystic, Hafiz of Shiraz, from the 14th century. On the day that I die, in the span of a single breath, grant me but a glimpse of you, and then, free from the desires of life and this world, upward I rise. There is much on life after death in Baha'i sacred writings. On this theme are illuminating passages. Among them, at death, there is an unveiling. Worlds holy and spiritually glorious will be unveiled to your eyes. Inspired by Baha'i sacred writings, I wish to revisit the premise of this presentation, the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul. In quest of consciousness, neuroscientists have reached an impasse, the puzzle of consciousness. Closely associated with the puzzle of consciousness is the mystery of the soul. Consciousness will ever remain a puzzle, the soul will ever remain a mystery. In quest of understanding consciousness, neuroscientists have reached this impasse, a point beyond which one can go no further. In quest of the puzzle of consciousness, Dr. Stuart Hameroff of University of Arizona, known for his studies, pioneering studies on consciousness, has proposed an intriguing, thought-provoking concept model for reflection and contemplation. This model, this concept can apply to the puzzle of consciousness and also to the mystery of the soul. It points to dimensions and mysteries that lie beyond our comprehension. I invite reflection on this perceptive model that consciousness may actually lie at the boundary that is on the edge between two worlds, two dimensions, the quantum and classical worlds. The quantum world has fantastic realities. He has proposed that consciousness is on the edge between the quantum world and the classical world. Consciousness may lie at the edge, at the boundary between these two worlds. That's possible. The strange, bizarre features of the quantum world may possibly explain or may relate to the incomprehensibility of consciousness. Hence, it is a puzzle. Likewise, this model may apply also to the mystery of the soul. Thus, consciousness is a puzzle because we are dealing with an incomprehensible phenomenon. We may be dealing with a dimension where conventional, traditional reasoning no longer applies. Consciousness is a puzzle, the soul is a mystery. Both are incomprehensible. Hence the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul. The quantum world has absurdities and strange realities. I call forth a statement from Richard Feynman, the esteemed winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1965. Richard Feynman, Nobel laureate in physics in 1965. He states that anyone who claims to understand quantum mechanics is either lying or crazy. Thus, I will not attempt to explain the absurdities of the quantum mechanics world. Nevertheless, I want to introduce and emphasize the thought that we may indeed be dealing with incomprehensible puzzles and mysteries. These possibly call our attention that both consciousness and souls are inscrutable. Consciousness is a puzzle, the soul is a mystery. On these two puzzles, two mysteries of consciousness and the soul. Consciousness is at the edge between the quantum and classical world. Hence a puzzle incomprehensible. The soul is on the edge between the quantum and classical world. Hence a mystery incomprehensible. Baha'i sacred writings affirm that the soul is a mystery beyond comprehension. The soul is a sign of God, a heavenly gem whose reality the most learned of men have failed to grasp, and whose mystery no mind, however acute, can ever hope to unravel. The soul is a mystery. We can delve deeper into Baha'i sacred writings to glean certain insights, images that may shed glimpses on that world bordering mystery, glimpses on the mystery of death and the continuation of the soul. The mystery of death and the continuation of the soul. The meaning of life, death, the soul, and the possibility of an afterlife have been man's perennial questions from the very beginning of human existence and will remain of central concern forevermore. In the Baha'i Faith, there is not a bodily resurrection, but rather is belief in the continuation of the human soul after the death of the body. Death is a transition from the earthly plane to the spiritual world. I call forth these words from Baha'i sacred writings. Words holy and spiritually glorious will be unveiled before its eyes. We are given the analogy of the embryonic world. The Baha'i sacred writings, an insightful analogy is offered to elucidate this mystery. This perceptive analogy, introduced, explained, and expounded through the wisdom of Abdul Baha, holds profound insights, meriting in-depth reflection. The analogy of the embryonic world can be applied to explain the transition that takes place at death from this physical world to the spiritual world. Just brief glimpse of the analogy of the embryonic world. The analogy of the embryonic world. During the 9 months of gestation, the embryonic environment is essential, critical to the embryo, to the fetus, as it must develop organs and faculties, which will be essential for its continuing progress after birth into the post-embryonic world. The analogy of the embryonic world can be applied to this physical world. The physical world provides the essential environment for the gestation, the development of the human soul, the development of faculties such as love, compassion, forgiveness, which will be essential to progress in the spiritual world. This image shows the fetus surrounded by the fluid in the amniotic sac, comfortably cushioned and protected. This fetus is connected by the umbilical cord to that essential organ, placenta. Through the placenta, it gets its sustenance. Further reflection on this analogy discloses numerous profound insights. During the period of embryonic development, the placenta is the organ essential to the existence of the fetus. At all the critical functions of the fetus, such as its blood circulation, nutrition, and so forth, are made possible through the placenta. At birth, however, the connection to the placenta must be cut, as well as the connection through the umbilical cord. It may be inconceivable that the newborn could continue to survive and flourish after the death of the very organ which had been hitherto essential to its existence. For the fetus, this may be viewed indeed as a catastrophic event. But is it? The placenta no longer of use, but rather an impediment, is cast off and disintegrates. Similarly, the physical body, no longer of use, only an impediment, is cast off. Transition instead is a liberation, not a catastrophe. By comparison, the physical body, similar to that placenta, the one and only means for continuation of physical existence, must be shed. Let us capture that in this next glimpse. The shedding of the body at death may be viewed as catastrophic. What is it? The transition from the earthly plane to the spiritual world. When the limit is reached, when the gestation period is complete, at death, the body, the physical garment, is cast off. The fledgling soul can soar unhampered. The soul continues its development in a world which would be impossible to describe, just as the post-embryonic world will be impossible to describe in a language comprehensible to the fetus born from the dark and limited environment of the womb, into the world of immense possibilities. Its lungs expand and fill with spiritual oxygen. The newborn is released into the physical world. Its soul is released into a vast new environment, into the spiritual world, using words from Baha'i sacred writings. Words holy and spiritually glorious will be unveiled before its eyes. Bursting through his cage, he will, even as the bird of spirit, wing its flight to this holy and everlasting nest. I thank you much for your attendance and for listening to this talk on the puzzle of consciousness and the mystery of the soul.
Thank you. That was really interesting. Yeah, really profound topics. Really appreciate your explanation of those themes. So now we have time for questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat. Okay, the first question is, in your opinion, what is the most important implication of the survival of consciousness for humanity?
Well, if you're asking me that question, what's the most important? So, well, it really relates to the soul. It's consciousness, agahi is agahi. That's a complex question, I think, becoming aware of these mysteries, of these inscrutable questions, inscrutable aspects of life. And the more we delve into them, gradually more and more may be revealed to us. I don't know whether I answered your questions, because your question is profound and comprehensive. I think trying to understand either of these, consciousness or the soul, will take us to meditation and higher levels of perception and understanding. that is delving, focusing, reflecting on the writings on these themes.
One question I had is, how can we, human beings are physically very similar to animals. So why is it that we only have consciousness in this way you've described and not animals?
I think one of my slides addressed that, in what manner we are different from animals. Due to many factors, we are similar. We have needs, we have hunger, we have certain impulses, but then in that one particular area that makes humans distinct from animals is that human beings can transcend, can delve into higher levels, as Abdul-Baha has indicated, has actually expressed that human beings can reach transcendence, have this desire to reach to higher levels of understanding of spirituality. In many other functions, we have similarities. I think that that is what distinguishes human from lower animals.
The next question is, can consciousness be transferred to a machine like AI?
It has been proposed by some neuroscientists. I don't believe so. I don't believe it can be. But the ones neuroscientists who suggested that actually received a lot of attention, but I don't think anyone actually is taking that very seriously, whether consciousness can be related to can have its counterpart through machines or through such means. In my opinion, of course not. And based on writings, Baha'i writings, not so.
Yes, I would like to better understand the word substance as it relates to the soul.
I don't actually understand the gist of that question. Substance implies something that can be measured, something that is, in one sense, material, or it has components that can be measured. So I don't have an answer for your question, for that question. The question is enigmatic. Maybe there are those among those attending who can possibly comment on that, but I cannot. I don't feel qualified to comment on that.
Many of the functions of the human soul seem also to apply to the animal. Why is it only that the human soul is endowed with immortality?
Well, because the human soul is very different from the animal soul. Abdul-Baha, in some answered question, in several sections, explains that human beings are unique, are singular, over and above lower animals. This is a dictum. This is something we believe. This is what Abdul-Baha has made very clear. And I do believe that all religions essentially believe the same thing, because religion and spirituality only applies to the human, to that singular entity, which is a human being. It does not apply to lower animals, although lower animals, according to Abdul-Baha, in some answered questions, do have souls at some level. But the soul of man there is a rational soul. He calls it the rational soul, is over and above the souls of lower animals.
Is the survival of the consciousness a practical tool for advancing civilization as envisioned by Baha'u'llah?
Survival of consciousness. You mean the human soul? Are you talking about the human soul? The human soul, its survival, its endurance, yes, its endurance is essential for the advance of civilization. And its progress, its upliftment is essential for progress of civilization. If we take the human out of the whole equation of living beings on planet Earth, all these discussions will become meaningless, because it's only the human being who is that ultimate singular form that can think, that can invent, that can expand its thinking, that can transform society. So the answer to your question is the obvious one. Yeah.
It was exciting to hear about the concept of consciousness being at the edge of classical and quantum universes. Can you comment more on this?
Yes, I mean, that whole thinking really intrigues me, that we are at the boundary between two worlds. And for those individuals, for those participants who are aware of what is being said and what is being taught about the quantum world, there's some very absurd things that we can't even comprehend, just as Richard Feynman has stated. It is a bizarre world. You have particles, you swing them, you move them in one direction, and in a direction thousands of miles away, they respond to that. And these are all realities. The physicists have shown us that the quantum world has these realities. They are incomprehensible. And that is why when we start thinking about the soul, in my view, if I adopt that model, which I do in my thinking, it becomes incomprehensible. That's why we cannot understand the human soul, because we are at that boundary. The material aspect, the material world, we can't comprehend to some extent. But once it's at the edge between two worlds, it becomes incomprehensible. I have found that proposal quite meaningful.
Are soul and spirit the same thing?
They have been used interchangeably in the literature, but according to Baha'i writings, they are very different. Abdul Baha calls the human soul as that rational soul, the soul that has rationality. And spirit is a general term that is used for that essence of anything, for that force in anything. That applies to all living forms, according to my understanding. And as I said, this is simply my perspective on this very complex and mystical subject.
Using the analogy of the embryo, that it is developing faculties for this world, could you expand on the relation of the soul to the body while we're alive?
Well, the soul comes into being at conception. And it's during passage through this life that it develops. Now, the analogy of embryo physically going through the process of embryogenesis and the development of the fetus and so forth has its counterpart also in the development of the soul. I don't know if that answers your question. Are we responsible for the consequence of our actions? According to Baha'i writings, yes, we are. We are responsible for the consequences of our actions or inactions.
And what do you think will be that consequence in the next world?
I think that in the next world, the objective, the process is progress until we attain the presence of God. So I think it could, you're asking my opinion, I think it could abort that process, or it could impede that process of progression toward attainment of the presence of that ultimate God.
The next question is, the concourse on high are the souls who have transcended to the spiritual world and are still conscious and can come to our assistance. Would you please comment on this point?
Well, I can't comment. That's what is in the Baha'i writings, that we have connection with those who have passed away, who are in the spiritual world, who are in the world beyond. Those connections are possible between those who are living and those who have progressed to the next world. And we can affect the progress of their soul by performing goodly deeds in their names, in their honor, and they can also affect our lives in this world. I think there are clear statements which lead me to believe that that is what is in Baha'i writings, what is being conveyed through Baha'i writings. Please realize that this is such a mysterious and mystical theme that any question that is asked and any answers which I provide should be taken in that fashion, that I'm simply sharing just fragments of my understanding in response to the question. They may be accurate or may not be. They are undoubtedly partial and not complete.
Yes, and someone just asked, as conscious beings, are we permitted to discuss our speculative, subjective perceptions about what the writings might mean?
Yes, I do think so. In fact, I have shared many of my understandings today, and there may be those undoubtedly who feel that what I presented, and in reality it is so, has been quite incomplete and quite partial. But I felt free to express those, unless and because those can be a stepping stone to further meditation, further reflection. And so I do believe that we are free to share our understanding, as long as we say, this is my understanding, this is my perspective on this particular question, recognizing that it's undoubtedly incomplete and fragmented.
The next question is anyone measuring energy in consciousness?
I'm not aware of measuring energy, but certainly the electroencephalograms do give measurements of certain waves, that certain patterns under various states of consciousness. That's very clear. That is, if one is reflecting in deep thought, one gets one pattern of electroencephalograms. While one is resting, it's got a typical pattern. One is if one is meditating in depth, it has one pattern. If one is resting, it has another pattern. I think those electroencephalograms of the brain show the state of the activity of the electrical waves of the brain.
Knowing that the embryo of spiritual existence in the womb of the mother, how is it perceived in understanding the outer world when Baha'u'llah suggests reading his poems to the child before birth?
So there must be vibration. When Baha'u'llah says that, it must affect the embryo, but I can't explain the how and the methodology. But he has encouraged us to do that.
I think that's it. So thank you so much again, Dr. Khodadad, for that really insightful talk. We appreciated it so much.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
And next week, our speaker will be Dr. Rhett Diesner, and he'll be speaking about the inner beauty of human beings from a Baha'i perspective. So again, these talks are every Saturday at noon Eastern time, and I've put the link to our contact form on our YouTube channel in the chat. And we'll end with a Baha'i prayer set to music.
Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. I am the sun of perception, the ocean of science. I revive the withered ones and quicken the dead. I am that light which illumines the path of insight. I am the falcon on the hand of the Almighty. I bear healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring. I bear healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring to the heaven of truth. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. I am the sun of perception, the ocean of science. I revive the withered ones and quicken the dead. I am that light which illumines the path of insight. I am the falcon on the hand of the Almighty. I bear healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring. I bear healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring to the heaven of truth. I bear healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring. I bear healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring to the heaven of truth. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me, find me.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Bye.